All right, ladies and gentlemen, and I have a very old special friend of mine, and we're going to be beginning broadcasting his show on our platform now that we switched from the audio side to now video and audio. He has a show called the Sports Doctor Radio, and he is also a sports podiatrist. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back my good friend, Mr. Doctor Bob Weil. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, Sean, it's nice to see you. We've been doing stuff in your world, I don't know, probably 7 years on and off, where we would touch base. We would call it the Sports Doctor is In, which is my label, where I take part in different shows like yours and talk about whatever, whether it is the role of the foot in sports, what's the best shoe. But the Sports Doctor, Sean, has a huge umbrella of guests. We talk a lot of the mental game, sports psychology, those kinds of challenges, dealing with so many things besides just sports and what the score is. So we always touch base, and it's great to see you face to face.
Exactly.
We've always done radio.
Exactly, but it's so much better when you see it on video because people that's when their attention gets increases.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. Video's got a lot of advantages. And what's on your mind, my friend?
Okay, so Jets quarterback, New York Jets quarterback, and it appears to be that he more likely back in week 1 against Ravens. He injured himself last month, during the preseason.
Well, trying to get into the season healthy, trying to get through the preseason again healthy, all these decisions by all these teams, it depends on the problem. One of the main goals is let's not make something minor.
I got it. It was a bone bruise and a torn meniscus.
Yeah, meniscus is one of the ligaments on the inside of the knee. Meniscus injuries, a lot of times, 3 to 6 weeks or longer. ACL injuries to the knee are the 6 months to a year serious injury. Meniscus, it's still a problem with tendons. That could be a tear. If it's a tear, it could be a month and a half. If it's a strain, then that might be what they're saying. Let's see how he responds to treatment, whether or not he could play. When is opening day, by the way?
The opening day for Sunday is September the 11th, and on Thursday is a couple. Well, it's on Thursday, but the opening day is September the 11th.
We for a few years on your show, Sean, we talked about the absolute stupidity of Thursday night football. Yes, we're talking health of the players. We're talking if you play on Sunday. I remember the great Gary Fensick of the Bears, the Super Bowl Bears, used to tell me when Monday night football became something, the idea to try to recover soon enough, because he would talk about, man, it's Wednesday or Thursday before my body's even recovering. You expect us, to play on Thursday. Of course, then it was a dream in somebody's eyes. So I still consider this not smart when it comes to the kind of scheduling when we're talking safety of players.
Right.
But there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of parity in the league. We're excited here in Chicago for the new quarterback, the whole new coaching and everything else. We wish everybody, Sean, a safe season. And we know what a war of attrition, professional football is, college football. So a lot of times it's that juggling act.
Right.
You got to have a good, competent backup quarterback. But hey, Mitch Trubisky, with all the hassles and whatever he dealt with here in Chicago, starting for the Steelers, and I'm rooting for him.
Right. And now, hey, at least Steelers got a quarterback now. They got 2 right now, Kenny Pickett and Trubisky.
Well, again, Mitch Trubisky was a head case in Chicago for a lot of reasons, starting with the fact that, again, he was chosen before Mahomes. He was chosen before Watson, where, people were going nuts, in Chicago. How could you choose this guy? Because he just never was that good, although he was quite good on occasion. And every week he would live down Why aren't you? We didn't choose Pat Mahomes, the MVP and everything else.
Right.
And besides his struggles, so the best thing that could happen for this kid was a clean slate where he could prove himself. He's got a lot of talent. He's a very physical player. He adds a lot of running to his game, and he won the position.
Exactly.
So we're gonna see what happens. But like you and I talk about all the time when we're talking about the challenges for the team doctors. On the Sports Doctor, I've had numerous times the baseball team doctor, Chris Amott of the Yankees. I've had the team doctor of the Bulls and the White Sox, Brian Cole. Next month, I'm having of the Steelers, their neurosurgeon for the past 30, 40 years, the head guy. And we're going to talk about the metamorphosis, Sean, of the concerns of concussions. And 25 years ago, man, the NFL fighting every step of the way to try to stop or get in the way of all sorts of real concerns. Hey, how many fingers?
Oh,
2
yeah,
fingers,
remember
go
that.
back in the game. And now there's a whole protocol, there's a whole serious attention. And youth sports, it's a very, very big deal. You know how I talk a lot about youth sports on the Sports Doctor, and the concussion is a big deal. And paying attention, the science is still, if you said to me, how long for a player before they come back? A lot depends on, the individual situation. So it's going to be very interesting to talk to Dr. Mooney, September 28th.
Okay.
He's on the Sports Doctor. And, we'll be talking about, those situations. So, pro football, it's a crapshoot. Serious football, it's a crapshoot because there is no safe football.
Exactly. It's a
So
contact sport.
it is. And it's these guys, as we've talked about on your show, they're bigger, they're faster, they're stronger, they train year round. It's a real sports science, nutrition, sports psychology. The human body is a human body. So it's amazing how these guys physically, and they're all, they're 280, 300 pounds, right?
Right. Exactly.
If you're not 320, I don't know if you're on the line. And you run a 4.940 and you bench press 450. So the idea and the rules, we're doing the best we can. There's no way to not have the contact, and the best of therapies, to try to keep somebody in the game, and this is something where it's tremendous responsibility. And, every coach, every sports parent, Sean, has to be a sports psychologist. This is a tremendous topic, the whole mental game, besides all the physical challenges. And again, Brian Urlacher, again of the Bears, he was kidding. But he said, if I got my bell rung, come to the sidelines, I'd say, gee, my foot hurts. I don't want to admit it, because if I admit it, I'm out a week. Or about 2 weeks. And it's a big problem in youth sports where these kids will hide their symptoms, Sean, because they want to stay in the game.
Dang.
You sent me the message last week. You remembered when you and I talked about on your show how so often there are cheaters. There still are cheaters with performance-enhancing drugs.
Now it's
no doubt about
survival.
it. Bingo. This is so often the reality where drugs are taken. Doc, I gotta play. Doc, my daughter's competing next week. She does double jumps 100 times a week in figure skating. And unless she takes 2 Advil twice a day, she's, so these are tremendous. And nobody has to explain, Sean, and we've talked about it again on your show, the nightmare of pain medicine, the opioids, the tremendous challenge. For years we fought with football. Every football player I knew over the years involved some way with marijuana.
Oh yeah.
To relax, Some had great success for pain relief, especially with the CBD additions. Yet in the football league and pro sports, many times, if you're caught smoking marijuana, you're suspended.
They did.
They'd rather the team doctor gave you a prescription for opioids. And that, over the years, was again one of the tremendous challenges. That's why nutrition is such a big deal. And again, and the psychology. One of my frequent guests, Shawn, and he's a contributor to my book, hashtag Hey Sports Parents.
Yep, I remember that book.
Yes, Rob Andrews is the head of mental training at the Institute of Sports Performance in Houston. And he's got a wall of gold medals because he's worked with the Olympic gold medal gymnastics teams and been to numerous Olympics. And one of his specialties now today is dealing with athletes mentally overcoming injuries. Again, you're out for a year, you're out 6 months, you see your career flashing before your eyes. And how do you deal with this mentally? And so this is, again, this is what a big deal injuries are, especially when you're talking pro sports, big, this is the tremendous pressure. And this is why, Jim McMahon used to kid about, he said, I every day I took pain medicine, some way, shape, or form. You wonder why I might have been a basket case in some way, shape, or form. So sports science is trying very, very hard to keep up. And, again, in every sport, Shawn, again, we go back to bigger, faster, stronger, and women's sports. Hey, man, the Chicago Sky, and we're excited here in Chicago, the defending WNBA champions. One of my colleagues is their team doctor, Dr. Holly Benjamin. Dealing again with these gals. Take a look at the physical ability of the female athlete today.
Now, there was a question we did ask before the show even started about Tom Brady's situation. Can you please explain to me why is it a big deal?
Well, again, we know whatever the big story was, and Tom Brady said, first of all, a 44-year-old still champion, most valuable quarterback, 1 in a trillion. So we have so many great things to say about Brady, about all of his habits, with his nutrition, his drinking 20 gallons of water a day, his tremendous attention to mental relaxation. So all of a sudden, he took off a week or two during training camp for personal reasons. And whoever it was who leaked, whether he's arguing with his famous wife or he promised he was going to retire. And again, even though he could handle anything, but the fact that he's got to now see in the news them making a big deal about whether he's having marital problems or, how easy would you handle that? For example. So the experts who work with the team, again, even if look at Simone Biles. We might have talked about that the last show I did with you in the spring. Again, we were talking about the mental health. And here we saw again Simone Biles, maybe the best athlete in the world, definitely in gymnastics, at the Summer Olympics say, I can't do it. I need some rest.
He probably had some mental issues before the event.
Yes.
I think people didn't cover that part because you got to remember to Larry Nassar.
But then it became the biggest story in the country. The whole attention that somebody that great could admit it. On the drug side, we talked about it on your show, the Russian young skater, the 15-year-old, one of the best I've ever seen. And my poster boy, my subspecialty is the world of figure skating, and my poster boy, the 2010 men's Olympic figure skating gold medalist. He was 10 years old when I put orthotics in his skates, and 12 years later, he's the best in the world. The rest is history. But this young skater, again, it exploded with them being disqualified and whatever because she was taking some kind of drug to calm down some of the overuse. My body is so sore, and the old uppers in the past and whatever. So again, everywhere you look, we want to add these kinds of topics on your show. You talk a lot of scores, and you talk a lot of betting, and you talk about all this exciting stuff. You do play-by-play. And what the sports doctors added to your stuff for how many years already?
It's going to be 9 years.
You're kidding me, man.
I'm
You
dead
got to find
serious.
some of our old stuff. And again, even though, a lot of times people would say, well, gee, the sports doctor show. I mean, last week I had a gal who's a specialist in the world of adoption, parents and young athletes and kids and teammates and those hassles. Or again, mental problems, the pressures of young kids who are playing sports. When I co-wrote the book, hashtag Hey Sports Parents, I said, Shawn, and we've talked about it on your show, that there still is an epidemic in capital letters of youth sports overuse injuries. Too much, too soon, but both physically and mentally. I had on my show 2 weeks ago the film director who's developing, I've talked to you about it numerous times, this documentary called Where Our Children Play, The Challenge of Youth Sports. His name is Joe Franco. He's an Italian filmmaker, and he's making a documentary. It's been interrupted because of the pandemic.
Right.
But the 2 days before he was on my show, and if people go to sportsdoctorradio.com, if they go to radio shows, they look back 4 to 6 months, they'll see that you were on the show with me. But he was on the show talking about the challenges of, screaming parents and all of this kind of craziness.
Oh, yeah.
And the day before, Shawn, a football coach of ninth graders was shot and killed.
Oh, yeah.
In Texas.
The youth football coach killed.
Exactly. And some sort of argument. What? So again, this topic is such a big deal. The idea of sports parents and coaches paying big attention to this side of stuff. It's supposed to be fun, everybody. Who's ranting and raving, let alone the fist fights and stuff like that. The documentary is going to stress a lot of the good stuff also. On my show, I have experts around the world who deal with youth sports and coaching coaches and these kinds of things. And again, you deal with high school sports, you deal with college sports, you have referees who don't want to be there anymore.
Oh, yeah.
You got the real hassle to find referees.
And especially got to deal with parents.
Exactly. So we want to keep this up front and center. Besides, again, talking about, hey, they're operating on adolescents for Tommy John surgery, people. The famous elbow surgery because of all this overuse. And then you have, again, especially in the South, where they're playing baseball year round.
Right.
And you have these young pitchers. The better the pitcher is, hey, listen, I got to tell you guys, past my old Little League All-Star team that I played on in Massapequa, Long Island, we got to the World Series. Now, we got beat. Okay. Yes, we got beat 2 games.
Matter of fact,
the team that from Honolulu that we played first that beat us with the slaughter rule ended up winning it all. But the idea to get there, and 2 weeks it's on television. A lot of people used to question how smart that was, making such a big deal. But they've done a great job with the Little League World Series. But again, there you are. I had to throw in that plug. Massapequa, Long Island. Man.
Thank you for pronouncing that.
I'm telling you, man, I'll send you my picture when I was on the lawn. I was a 12-year-old, man, on the Orioles I was on. And again, there were parades, and Little League was a big deal. But you know what happened to Little League, Shawn, 20 years ago, 25 years ago?
What happened?
They woke up one day, and they said, holy cow, 40% of these kids don't want to come back. They don't want to play. Why not? Same stuff. The too much and the pressure. And, the famous sports psychologist, he shared my radio show with me for about 8 years in the 90s, the late Jim Vickery. He used to talk to parents. I would drag him along with me when we would lecture to parents. I would talk about when he's supposed to be using ice and what's the best shoe for your kids. And he would talk about this stuff. And one of his first rules for parents was don't be a critic. Don't go over every mistake your kid made right after the game. You know, all of
Right.
those kinds of things. So again, on your show, when you're dealing with what the score was, you're dealing with all of these exciting things about the game, all these rivalries, you know, whether it's professional, whether now, good luck to you with all the betting and stuff that's going on,
Especially
man.
the early weeks of football.
Yes. And
It's a
this, I got
pain in the
news for
neck.
you. The famous Rick Tellender, who wrote for Sports Illustrated for 10, 15 years, probably published 8, 10 books. Now he's the lead sports writer at the Chicago
Right.
Sun-Times. And he was really talking about the craziness with money in college sports and what that's going to be. You know, you're a top quarterback coming out of high school, going to a big school. You're going to sign a contract, man, for a lot of money with some sort of
With
business.
endorsements.
Exactly. This was prohibited.
Right.
So these are the kinds of stuff that sometimes when I'm saying, man, you know, with the sports shows and all of these things, but the sports doctor's in, and that's what I want to label our segment. This is the sports doctor is in, again, where I contribute, where we help educate your world, whether it's coaches are listening in, again, or parents who are listening in. One of the chapters in my book is called Youth Sports and Drugs. It's not about opioids. It's about over-the-counter drugs, Shawn. Ibuprofen, the Advils. Again, where you talk to a young traveling sports team, young high school team, you find out that half of them need to take over-the-counter pain medicine, man. Otherwise, you know, my ankles are killing me, Dr. Weil. And if I don't take the Advil, it starts very early because of the pressures, you know. Parents saying, what do you mean your ankle still hurt? We've been to 5 doctors, you know,
Right.
suck it up. And all of these kinds of stupid pressures. So these are the things that we talk about a lot. The pandemic has quadrupled all of it. Every guest I have on the Sports Doctor Show, wherever they are in the world, whatever their vocation, whatever they're writing, they talk again about mental health, you know, in this whole past 2.5 years. Last night on 60 Minutes, the feature story was these challenges with adolescent suicides, bullying, and all of these things that have been dramatically exacerbated. So we tell people all the time, don't be afraid to get help. This is why even someone like Simone Biles said, hey, you know, I'm the best athlete in the world. Who was the famous great swimmer with 100 gold medals?
She used to be an Olympic.
Him. Who's the famous
Michael
superstar?
Phelps.
Right. Michael Phelps has done commercials for the online mental health. You know, he's got more gold medals than anybody else ever. But he was talking about that it was okay to not be okay.
Because he
You
had
know,
depression. He
yes,
talked
he
about that.
did. Or these kinds of challenges. Let alone, can you imagine the kind of pressure if you're one of the best athletes in the
Especially
world?
for the
And
Olympics.
yes, or professional. You know, I used to have a contest. I'll ask you, what's tougher, to become a pro athlete or to become an Olympian?
I would have to say as a pro athlete because in Olympics it's like every 4 years.
Right? I tell you, it's a great, you'll get a million. Ask your listeners that. I have another question that we ask on the Sports Doctor all the time for your
Sure.
listeners, which is which sports require the best athletes? Is it the defensive back in football? Is it the 5-hour guy who's been out playing tennis? You know, is it the water polo? Which sports require the best athlete? Is it the NBA athlete? So again, these kinds of things with the idea of 2 things that we want to bring to the table, Shawn, all the time in sports, fitness, and wellness. Again, number 1, can we prevent injuries? Can we prevent problems? And number 2, can we enhance performance? You want to be a step or 2 quicker? Strengthen your feet and ankles, man. Work balance. That's another chapter in my book. Those 2 exercises. I don't care what your sport is. You know, ankle injuries is still the biggest problem. So many times we're talking about that. Again, you know, my son or daughter is very talented, Should we see a good physical therapist to show us the really right kind of strength training? Of course, you should. Now, if you're a pro athlete, you got a whole stable of people who are paying attention. You have your own chef, team chef. Again, you've got the team psychiatrist, psychologist, team podiatrist, team mental coach. So they've come a long, long way in pro sports and serious college sports of paying big attention to the things, again, that you and I have included on your show over the past, like you said, 9 years. And we want to keep on doing that, Shawn, when we get together. Again, the Sports Doctor Radio, people can find out all that information at sportsdoctorradio.com. We cover a tremendous array of topics, but all of it deals with sports medicine, fitness, or wellness. So in that regard, and we've always been part of your world for who knows, like we said, these 9 years. And we want to keep you on your toes.
Exactly.
The fact that you remembered sports surviving drugs, man. I'm telling you, my hat's off to you. Raise a glass.
Thank you. There was another question I want to ask, because it is the U.S. Open, by the way, in tennis. Now, Rafael Nadal suffered kind of like a freak injury.
Yes. And first of all, he's had a freak foot injury.
Okay.
That he's been dealing with. That's really a little bizarre, and it's really been a headache. But he also has been dealing with a stomach, what started at some sort of slightly torn fascia in his stomach or core. So when you think of serving, even back, he won Wimbledon. When he he won the French Open. I'm sorry,
yeah, French,
Novacek. Yes. So Nadal, for the past 6 months, has been dealing with, and I don't know if it showed. A young American beat him yesterday. This kid, huge win to beat Nadal. This is the first time since I think 2017 that Nadal's been knocked out before the quarterfinals.
Wow.
And Rafa Nadal holds the record for the most, even though 14 of them are the French Open, but he holds the record for the most majors. He's got like 23 majors. So he's got two areas of the body, and we know what a physical player this guy is. It's amazing. He's 36 years old. If you would have asked me when I was seeing some of these guys, even 15 years ago, I put orthotics in John McEnroe's shoes, man.
Yes, you did.
Tracy Austin. I don't want to date myself. Jimmy Connors.
Yeah.
Again, when John McEnroe came to train with my famous colleague, Bob Guida, again, tennis players didn't work out, Shawn. They didn't work out or lift weights.
Yeah, I was going to say
He looked at Tracy Austin and said, "What, are you out of your mind? All I do is play more tennis." So Nadal, where we thought he has had knee problems. The fact that this guy is still on top of the world at 36 years old is an amazing, pleasant surprise. Because again, in the contest that we've had for which sports require the best athletes, a lot of people say tennis. When you're out there 3, 4, 5 hours, man. It's such a physical game. So I think they talked about a little bit, my friend McEnroe doing the play-by-play, as whether Rafa's serve wasn't as sharp as it was, because he was, again, very concerned about re-aggravating. Every time you move or swing a racket, you're using your core. I was amazed he was still able to, they played 3.5 hours.
That's a long time for a tennis player to play that, especially when it's fall.
Do you remember the name of the young guy who beat him? Tiafuri? What's his name?
I can't even pronounce his name.
Is it Tiafuri or Tiafuri? I've never seen him before.
It's the first time I've heard of him when he beat them.
Yes, and I had a young guy that I used to. Tim Smichek was a patient of mine. He was in the top 100.
Okay.
5-6 years ago, he is at the Australian Open, and he got there qualifying. And he's playing in the second round, Rafa Nadal. And it's on at like 4 a.m, man, the Australian Open. I'm tuning in, man.
Exactly.
He loses the first set and a half, and already they're switching to another match. All of a sudden, he wins the tiebreaker. All of a sudden, he wins the fourth set. 2.5 hours later, it's 4 hours. Nadal is serving. Someone in the audience screams. Nadal hits a fault. Tim Smichek, my patient, says, "Hey, it's, I don't want to count that."
Right.
He won an award for that. and it was such a big deal. Nadal's
Amazing.
talking to his fans. He's saying, this is some real sportsmanship. So that was my player Tim Smicek's claim to fame. But Rafa, it was an amazing match. We're gonna have to see how this young dude does. And I'm a big Coco fan also. Coco Graf is very, very exciting. And Serena Williams, best ever. It was so exciting. She went down as a real champion. And that's, and no, people who have not seen the movie, see that movie, King George or with about the Williams.
Okay,
And
I don't think I never saw that movie.
Fantastic. What's his name is in that movie, the famous actor who slapped Chris Rock.
Oh, Will Smith.
Right. I love Will Smith, man. He lost it a little bit, but he does it. He won the Best Actor award in the story. We saw the Williams sisters 100 years ago. And their dad, who everybody in tennis said, you're nuts, and their mother, and you're not doing this right, you're not doing that right. And he ends up saying, my two daughters are going to be the best in the world. And he was right. So Serena Williams and Venus, some of the greatest stories in tennis. And it'll be interesting to see, who wins. It's wide open.
Exactly. Now, again, where can my listeners find you on social media and your show?
My show is live, Sean, every Wednesday, 3 o'clock Central Standard Time, bbsradio.com/The Sports Doctor. They could find out all that information about everything if they go to sportsdoctorradio.com. We have thousands of followers on Twitter and LinkedIn. I can't tell you how many guests I get. We have a lot of great, good information at Sports Doc, DOC Radio. They catch up with us on Twitter. And then, hey, man, it's great to be back in our first video.
Exactly. I love doing video more than audio.
So this is what you look like. All right, I got you.
Exactly. Because people probably look like, what do you look like? Now you're seeing what I look like.
Hey, I got dressed up for you, man. You know what I
mean? Oh, we should do this again next month.
Hey, let me know. It's great to be back with you, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you. In the broadcast.